Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience. And I apologize, we're starting a couple of minutes late. It's that Friday afternoon after lunch, last session. But I'm very happy to be moderating this afternoon's last session, titled Evaluation in Fragile Settings. We have both the challenge of being the last session of a very intense and rich 3-day conference, but we've also got the opportunity to really reinforce some of the key themes that have been emerging, and in particular from this morning's very dynamic plenary session that was really combining the monitoring, the evaluating, and the learning in crisis contexts. My name is Sarah Longford. I'm one of the Deputy Directors of Evaluation at the World Food Programme. And the focus of our session is really to dig deeper and answer questions around the how and the what. The how, the questions that been posed is, how do we evaluate in fragile settings? And fragile settings, as we all know, can be defined as overlapping, interconnected challenges that people are facing. It's multidimensional. And as the representative from South Sudan said this morning, can ebb and flow as natural disasters or conflicts flare up, down, and as the social economic situation evolves. And some countries, as we know, are fragile in their entirety, and others may be a stable nation with pockets of risk. So the question is, the how do we evaluate in those settings? And how do we overcome the obstacles and challenges? And we've heard over these last 3 days a plethora of challenges. I'm not going to talk to them now. We can sum up at the end. And then the what. The what do evaluation criteria mean in these settings? Do all the evaluation criteria carry the same weight? Or what other considerations must we take? We have, as always, a very esteemed panel with 4 different perspectives, 2 from government, 1 with a state perspective, the other from the federal level. And we've got the voice of civil society and the perspective also from the UN. So I'm glad to introduce our first panel member, Dr. Abdirazak Mohammed, who's now a senior advisor at the Ministry of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation at Galmudug State in Somalia. And he comes not just as representing government, but he comes from an academic background, as well as worked with the UN, private sector, and civil society. The floor is yours, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Sarah. I'm honored today, and it is grateful to attend this conference. The conference that gathering monitoring and evaluation expertise. Really, I admire during the sessions that I have attended the competent people who are here. I'm from Somalia. So before starting anything, I just would like to make the outline of my yes.
This one.
Yeah. The outline of my speech is built this way. I will start with telling the country profile, Somalia. Many of you know Somalia, but I will tell something about the Somalia. And then we do have, after many years, development plans, national development plans, and this I will go through. and then the policy requirements and the monitoring and evaluation, how the state level fees where I come from, because right now I'm in the Galmudug federal state. So that's what I'm going to do this evening. Somalia is in the Horn of Africa. The area of Somalia is 637,657 kilometers. And we do have still the longest coastline in Africa. Somali population is growing rapidly with annual population growth rate of almost 3%. So that's why the number showing here, 16 million, is roughly estimated. Maybe we are more than that, since there is no census that did correctly. Almost 3% or almost 46% of the this number are under 19 years old. They are very young. 30% of 66% of them are also under the 30 years old. Somalia has experienced last 30 years conflicts with after the collapse of the Siad Barre regime. We got many shocks. That shocks is it still exists. But in August 2012, Somalia passed a new provisional constitution that established a federal government. The federal government of Somalia is consists 6 states. 2 states, one state is established in 1998, before 2012. So the other state is called Somaliland. Somaliland, they declared 1991 independent from the Somalia. So as you see this slide, Jubaland established in 2011, Southwest 2002, Galmudug, where I came from, 2006. Here, Hirshabelle is the last state that established it. Recently, new president of Somalia elected and the parliament elected. So Somalia is transforming towards increased stability through institutional and political reforms. So that's what I'm going, the institutional, which began the adaptation of the provisional constitution and the federal government, under the government of federal Somalia 2012. I'm not going in details in that, but when it comes to the legislations and the strategies that adapted Somalia, including National Development Plan. National Development Plan number 8 was the first one after many years. The last one did Somalia 1986. Actually, the mandate of the timeline of National Development Plan in previous was 5 years because of the physical years that is done. But this, the last National Development Plan 8 was 3 years. It started 2017, 2019. The plan was aligned Sustainable Development Goals under IBRSB. I'm not going in details, but the main point in this slide is that National Development Plan recommended to have national monitoring and evaluation framework. That was, and also they recommended to establish separate entity that make the statistics, Somali National Bureau of Statistics. The National Development Plan 9, which started 2024, it also the foundation of from long time not having a national development plan, and the main focus is still economic development and poverty reduction. This also is in line with the Sustainable Development Goal and other strategies that in line with this. So the key national priorities reflecting in this area: inclusive and accountable politics, improved security and rule of law, improved economic development and social development. But this time, the Somali National Bureau of Statistics has the prime responsibility of collecting, disseminating data as related to the indicators of National Development Plan 9. So now I'm going to go through what is about this national monitoring and evaluation framework that we have in place in Somalia. So this national monitoring and evaluation framework was adopted in 2019. The main purpose of this is to guide and coordinate across the federal government of Somalia and the federal member state in concerning this monitoring and evaluation, and also improve the public sector managing implementation of the particular programs and the projects that by the public sector. Having said this, the establishment a clear framework for institutionalization of monitoring and evaluation. But here, this framework is not implemented as it was supposed to do. But the main task was to cover and build 6 principles that, namely, managing for result, value for money, accountability, ownership, partnership, learning, and ethics and integrity. We do not have yet independent national evaluation body, but since I was last time in Mogadishu, there was a group of evaluators. They were talking about establishing a new evaluation body. So it is in process, but still we do not have that body yet. Policies required this mostly it's coordinated by Federal Minister of Planning and International Cooperation. So the task of the framework is divided. It is divided that Statistics Bureau, its duty is to collect data and disseminate, where Minister of Planning, Directorate of Monitoring and Evaluation, they have oversight. So, but still, there is one question that Sarah asked it, and was how the data is collected. The data is collected under what tools we use in Somalia. The tools that we use, there is no harmonized, no single tool is used. Mostly the tools that we use, it is, they are those, the international NGOs and the other NGOs use. Only federal level is collected, that data. But when we come to the member states where I'm from, so just we have a consultative meeting where we call all the stakeholders and partners, and they give the data and we discuss. So they share their data, and that data will feed to the federal state. That's shortly what I want to contribute here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think what you've spoken of is very much a framework and policy that is in place following the National Development Plan. But yet the alignment is still in progress. So maybe you could speak a little bit more about some of the obstacles and how you're overcoming those obstacles in this data collection, in the consultation mechanisms to bring the different voices, obviously within the ministries, you've cross ministry, but the other stakeholders.
Thank you very much. This is a good question. Right now we have, as I told before, we do not have yet, our constitution is in progress. So we don't have the constitution, Somali constitution is in progress. Last, the former president era, they tried to conclude, but it was very difficult. This time they will try, the new president has 4 years mandate. So I believe during these 4 years, they will conclude, and this will give the mandate how to do it. As you know, the federal system is in Somalia is a good tool to use, but it is not the one that in common. Saying this in short, Federal Minister of Planning, they took the lead now, and they want to do this consultation. And I believe in coming years, we'll have a single tool that we could use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll open the floor after the second speaker. So in terms of questions to on the Somali context and what Dr. Mohammed said. And I'm pleased now to go to Dr. Taraya El-Delbi, who's the Deputy Head of Planning and International Cooperation Commission. And she supervises all the plans and programs and projects for cooperation with development partners from different bilateral countries or organizations in coordination with all the relevant national. So over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. At first, it's a pleasure to me to be with you here with my colleagues at this panel. And I hope that I can give you an idea about the Syrian experience in the evaluation in its special conditions. At first, I will give you an idea about my commission that I worked on it. It is very similar to the Ministry of Planning, my colleagues in Somal, but maybe it has another, we can say it duties. At first, we can say that the Planning and International Cooperation Commission in Syria is considered the technical body that empowers the Higher Council for Economic and Social Planning and is directly reporting to the Prime Minister. So it has the power. Also, it is responsible of studying and analyzing the social, economic, and environmental conditions in Syria, identifying their impact on the Syrian economy, proposing long, medium, and short-term strategies and plans for development at the national and local levels. Also, it is responsible of monitoring and following up the implementation of various plans, evaluating their contribution to achieving development goals, and evaluating the progress achieved in the value of indicators related to achieving the national objectives. Also, it prepares periodic reports. Is about 3 months and half of a year, and yearly reports. And we give it, of course, for the Prime Minister and for as I said, for the Higher Council of Economic and Social Planning to take the decisions for the next period. Also, the Commission is responsible of managing the financial and technical aid in order to make optimal use of it to meet the needs of Syrian beneficiaries parties. It prepares strategies, plans, and programs to cooperate with various donors, follow up the implementation of the resulting projects and programs, and evaluates their impact on the Syrian economy. Now I try to give you an idea about how we worked on collecting the data, or how we evaluate the plans and the strategies. Of course, as you know, there is many difficult circumstances that Syria has been facing since 2011, but in 2020 we have the National Strategic Plan Syria 2030, which consists on 5 interrelated pillars and within 4 main overlapping phases: relief, recovery, upward, and development sustainability. The national vision and identification of programs and projects and their implementation metrics based on the analysis and evaluation of sector situation, which include legislation and institutional structure of the sector, infrastructure of the sector, indicators of input and output, strength and weakness, opportunity and challenges. Of course, the data was collected and analyzed by working teams. These working teams have representatives of the relevant public bodies, private sector, non-governmental organization, universities, and research centers, and relied on the data available in the Central Bureau of Statistics and systematic studies conducted by international bodies. At the same time, we can say that we give the M&D specific importance, that we give it a special paragraph, and we put some programs that related to have special national system for it, because unfortunately we don't have system for the M&D until now. And now we are working on it with UNDP. In other hand, as we said, we are working with the donors. We have strategic framework with the UN agencies for the period 2022 to 2024, which focusing mainly on building the resilience of people and communities, support basic livelihood, and multi-year early recovery activities. How we prepared for it? Here we have assessments that, based on the data available of the Central Bureau of Statistics and the results of sectoral surveys and studies carried out in the coordination with the international organization. Also, we have many workshops that held with the representatives of all concerned national authorities. Also, at this SF, we put specific importance for the MND. There is a paragraph of monitoring and evaluation plans, and this one tries to working on reports regarding of quality of implementation, achieved results, and financing. Here I talked what we worked on it, but as I told you, we suffered from the data. There is a lack of data. We cannot have the data from whole areas. We try to use another instruments, another tools. These tools depends on, we can say, assessments at the sectoral level, such as health, education, and of course, the reports related to the monitoring progress of SDGs. Also, we tried to, or we worked to carry out some reports. The first national reports on sustainable development for the period of 2015 until 2020 was prepared during 2020, which was approved as the PACE report, and has been prepared with, as I said, with all the partners in the Syrian economy, private sector, NGOs, academic research centers, ministries, and also we worked, or we were focus on the participation of different Syrian governments. Here we tried to work with 300 participants from different Syrian governments through 3 specialized workshops to have the results of it. Also, we have the first VNR. This one we carried out 2020. This review showed the progress made in the targets and indicators of the goals for the period 2015 until 2019 to complement the first national report on sustainable development. Also, there is economic and social assessment of the impact of COVID-19, SIA. We have it for the year 2021, which was prepared in cooperation with UNDP, which will contribute in identifying the necessary intervention to improve living conditions and increase resilience and supporting the humanitarian actors. Other tools is very important, that we have many surveys, and we try to have some, we can say some system, not system, I can say it, let me tell you on some names of these surveys. For example, that we have it now annually food security survey. And this is very important for us to have the information, the data about the situation of the security, the food security, to put the policies and to put the intervention. Also, we now try to work with UNICEF to have mix also is very important tools that we give us a very huge of indicators. And there is number of systems have been implemented for the benefit of a number of ministries in cooperation with the UN organization, especially in health, social affairs, and labor, will pave the way for important database. So you can see, Sarah, that unfortunately we don't have system for monitoring for M&D, but we try to have many tools that give us the data and try to work on it. Of course, it is under our commission, but of course, with coordination with all beneficiaries in Syrian economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Delbi. And I think we're hearing some similar themes about the importance of a framework, which is still work in progress.
That's right.
The importance of the National Bureau of Statistics as a center point in a repository. We're hearing about challenges on access or changing administrative boundaries, and therefore data that might have been collected pre-crisis and now crisis, how you reconcile that, and all the different different data collection tools that are all pulling together. So before we move on to the next panelist, would you like to ask a question to the panelists? You, sir.
Thank you.
It's much more of a quick remarks because I was amazed by the similarities. I came from UNDP Yemen, and the similarities is quite similar. However, we could not rely on any statistics because the last statistics that we relied on was done in 2014. And that was a household budget survey and some statistics in remote areas. However, the manipulation of any statistics that was done in a fragile state is immensely badly manipulated for the benefits of getting more support from the international organizations. For the sake of, we are in dire strait, we are here suffering. So the numbers, no matter what you do, they try to force people, sometimes kill people to get their information and change it, or the government of this side or that side manipulate those figures just for the sake. The only thing that we can rely on is the monitoring and evaluation that was done by international organizations, and the latest report that was done by WFP with other agencies supporting it was for Yemen was remarkably the right step in, to rely on. The World Bank also did some statistics. I myself, in my projects, I try to do a lot of surveys for the fisheries, for the coastal areas. In some areas I was successful, in other areas they simply crushed the people who did the surveys and took the information, and we lost some people. They killed them anyway. The situation, information is fatal here and could kill. You can get yourself killed for getting that information. And for the sake of reliability, I think, and authenticity of the information, we can only rely on our own international organizations' support to each other to get the right information until we have a reliable government structure that we have a proper tool to rely on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing both, I think, some really words of caution, and I think we're going to be touching on that as we go closer to the other examples and panelists. There was a hand.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Turayo, for the presentation. My name is Edward Morba from Liberia. My question, I have two questions, specifically on the presentation made by the doctor. Seems to me that the evaluation processes in Syria are more of donor-driven, And how does that intend to sort of strengthen national capacities? And related to that, the government, does the government have a dedicated sum maybe put aside for evaluation, you know, as a way of as a manifestation of interest, or showing interest for or showing results for money? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ellerby. A short answer to this. We'll have more opportunity later. Over to you.
Okay, no, there is no problem. I want to thank you for your question. Of course, we are not dependent on the UN agencies to have our information or our data, but we believe that the working with UN agencies who works in Syria, we are partners. The situation in Syria, it is very difficult, and as you know, we need the information and the data in various sectors and various fields, because after the crisis, you need to build the economy and etc. The way that we work it in Syria, we are the responsible about the statistical system working with, they are working with us, they are support us, but they are not working behind without us. All the UN agencies give us the support, the financial support and training for the people who worked on it. So you can see that we have many programs worked with the UN agencies, but supporting the Syrian government. As Syrian government always said in any report, in any we can study gift from the UN agencies must depend on the Statistics Bureau of Syria, or that we can work together in it and the Syrian side have the approval of it.
Thank you. So the issue remains one of leveraging each other's data, but the paradigmatic shifting, it's very much owned by government, and the partners all need to feed into that. So moving to the civil society voice, Dr. Sori Monikata is an international development expert and consultant based in Mali, and he's the executive secretary at Ebenezer International, and he brings the experience of managing several programs across West Africa, but also other parts of sub-Saharan Africa, and brings many different, I think, aspects in terms of having been an evaluator, a commissioner, and very much a user. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah. And I would like to talk about our experience as organization that support civil society when they are conducting advocacy initiatives with government, but also with UN partners like UNFPA or World Health Organization. And our organization, actually, when we raise resources, we work with networks of civil society organizations. And in West Africa, we decided to work with the network which is linked to the Ouagadougou Partnership, which has been established by ECOWAS presidents in 2011 to organize civil society so that they can contribute in helping sexual and reproductive health issues, family planning issues, how civil society can come together and support national initiatives, but also regional initiatives. So when we decided to support civil society in that, we saw the need to provide resources for them to conduct advocacy initiatives, but that must be backed by data and information. So we saw the need to conduct some studies. I don't call them evaluation actually, because these are not evaluation that we do at the end of a specific intervention. We do that, but the kind of studies I'm talking about here are specific studies that can help to collect and analyze data on specific issues that will inform civil society and also government and the partners, so that they can see where indicators are good, where indicators are not good, and what efforts are needed. So there are 4 kinds of studies, for instance, here that we conducted. One is the political economy of the sexual reproductive health rights sector. You know, donors want to do this kind of evaluation when they want to invest their resources in the country. They want to know the challenges that are there and what is the priority. So we did this in 6 countries: Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Niger, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. Malawi is the only country which is not fragile state. If you take World Bank or Fund for Peace criteria for fragile states, but all these other countries are fragile settings. And the second kind of study that we decided to conduct is the literature review, trying to see what international agreements are there in the sector and how state legislation is in line with that. What did the state do to align the national policy or legal system to the international agreement? And then we try to investigate more and see which organization has developed which kind of tool. It could be like monitoring tools. It could be modules to train people for awareness raising purposes. But we try to see what are the documents that are ready that civil society can use and other partners as well to support the work. And the last kind of study that we did, not the last, actually the third study, was to compare indicators from countries. This kind of study create a kind of positive competition between countries. If you see that, for instance, one of the results of that study was ECOWAS states decided that each country should invest 15% of its national budget in health issues. And when we compare that indicator across the countries, you can see Burkina Faso beyond 12.5%, but Mali was a little bit beyond 5 only. So you can see that there is a huge need to push the government and the partners to invest more in health. The last kind of study was the school community. Sexual and reproductive health is something that is impacting negatively the education of people in our context. So we tried to investigate what do school communities know about sexual reproductive health. If the government and its partners are to invest in that community, what should they do? And so the information, we did that study with more than 34,000 people actually in 6 countries. And so conducting this kind of evaluation or studies with civil society, but also using UN system reports and government documents is something that we found valuable, because it helps civil society to get information that they can use to push things, not to work on their own, but to align what they ask on national priorities. Now, the reports, when we produce many reports like that, it's too many. And you want a ministry or a minister to use it, they are not going into all the details. So we decide to produce a summary report that put the essential information from all the countries we work in one document, so that it can be easy to use by decision makers. And I will come back to some of the issues we cope with here. But when we produce the report, they are used by coalitions of civil society. So if you look at the regional level, we have the the regional coalition, which includes 9 countries. And in each country, you have minimum 30, maximum 50 organizations, international and national organizations that are working on sexual and reproductive health issues. So we give them the report. They use it in advocacy. They use it on fundraising. They also use it for awareness raising. Awareness raising not only for rural population, for ordinary citizens, but even for state workers, officials of the government who do not know these kind of things. So the last thing I want to mention is my involvement in the process of the National Voluntary Report on the Sustainable Development Goals. Civil society is always involved in that process in Mali. And I had the privilege to lead the work of civil society in 2018 when the government of Mali submitted its first report. My work was at that time, I was the executive secretary of the Forum for International NGOs in Mali. That forum had 91 international organizations together at that time. And they had different thematic groups. They would analyze each sustainable development goal and suggest what should be said to the government to include in the report for Mali. And I would actually be like the spokesperson for these groups. But this year, 2022, the government also submitted its second report, and we went through a different approach. I am no longer the executive secretary of FONGIM, Forum of International NGOs, but I was working as a consultant, coordinating the work. So what we did was to do the study in the 10 regions of Mali, going to citizens in different activities and different sectors and asking them what they think about the sector, education, health, employment, and etc. So we collect the information, but we did this with a guide that has been submitted by an organization which is Action for Sustainable Development. You know that when you conduct national voluntary report, there is a guideline that comes from New York and the government should follow it. When the civil society also is doing its work, we have a guideline that we follow. So, but the process brings together 3 big umbrella organizations in Mali. We have the international branch of NGOs, but at the national level, we also have 2. They all come together and share the work, analyze the information, and then the report is sent to the government to inform the government's report that goes to New York. So there are a lot of challenges in the context of Mali to get information, especially when you go to the north or the center where insecurity is there and a lot of conflict going on. I will come to a little bit of that later, but the process was well conducted. There were some challenges that I will mention during coming intervention. Thank you.
Actually, Dr. Monikata, I think it would be very appropriate to speak to some of the ways, because we've heard from the previous 2 speakers about some of the reach, of the access to people, and I think it would be very good if you could tell how you've overcome some of those issues in the Mali context. But before that, I think this power of positive competition, the power of regional evidence, and the power that it's not necessarily an evaluation, but it's the data, the studies that have been put together to inform, I would say, a type of lobbying to ensure that you're holding the governments to account for the targets that have been set at the regional level, international level, and at the national level. Very, very interesting. So in terms of these, how you overcame some of the obstacles and challenges related to the access, gaining some of this and gaining some of the access to people who wouldn't have otherwise be reached.
Yeah. For challenges to access people, for instance, to get the information, when you organize this evaluation from Bamako, you cannot travel to some places because of insecurity, but we had to be creative to use at the same time online and offline strategies. So on the ground, we would identify people who know the context and who can actually collect the data in a safe manner. And then we use, tablets or telephones sometimes to collect that information. When it comes to Bamako, we do have a small team that is centralizing data before we analyze them. So it has to do with creativity and sensitivity to the context, not to expose people who are involved in the process and get the information we need on time.
Thank you. That also speaks to the gentleman's from Yemen's his point as well. I will open the floor after the next presentation, and it's my pleasure now to move to Rana Salam, who's the regional evaluation expert from WFP, based at the Regional Bureau for Middle East and North Africa and Eastern Europe in Cairo. And in her role, she supports the management and conduct of country-level decentralized evaluations. And she's going to talk about the experience of a decentralized evaluation of WFP's food assistance in Libya. Over to you, Rana.
No, thank you so much, Sarah. Let me start by giving a little context to the situation in Libya and why we decided to conduct this evaluation. Libya's been, oh, sorry, can I have this, please? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So Libya's been going through a humanitarian crisis since 2014 due to a multidimensional and multi-layered conflict that really touches more on tribal, ethnic, regional, political, and even economic divides. As a result of this, Libyans suffer from poverty, limited access to basic services, food insecurity, displacement, insecurity, economic hardships, and frequent power cuts. This evaluation is actually the first evaluation that took place since WFP was operational in Libya since 2014. The evaluation, it took place in 2020, and the planning for this evaluation had actually started before the onset of the pandemic. But because we already knew that we have access issues in Libya, the evaluation was already planned in a way that would allow for remote data collection from the beginning. Of course, additional considerations had to be taken after COVID had started. So this decentralized evaluation examined WFP's general food assistance activities, which aim at providing vital food assistance to the people most affected by the crisis. It aimed to serve both objectives of accountability and learning to enhance the program's design and implementation. And we also decided to add a particular focus on understanding how the program incorporated conflict sensitivity. The evaluation had a mixed methods approach for collecting and analyzing data, ranging from document review, field visits to distribution sites, interviews with key informants from WFP's team, local partners, national stakeholders, UN agencies, donors, beneficiaries, and non-beneficiaries as well. The methodology as well also included a conflict sensitivity case study, which analyzed how the program is interacting with changing conflict dynamics and the approaches WFP have adopted amidst shifting political alliances and control, and the extent to which this has impacted the operation access and safety. So the case study examined the extent to which conflict dynamics have been taken into account during the planning, implementation, targeting, and distribution. It also aimed to identify the measures that WFP and partners have been taking to contribute to peace. It focused on 3 key lines of inquiry. The first is the extent to which, thank you. The extent to which WFP and partners were able to build a clear understanding of the peace and conflict dynamics in which the program took place. The extent to which WFP and partners were able to identify how the program interacts with the context negatively or positively and adjust the programming accordingly. And finally, the extent to which WFP and partners were able to recognize risks contributing to tension and conflict and address them in addition to the opportunities for contributing to peace and maximize them. Moving on to the obstacles and challenges. So this evaluation had a number of limitations and challenges, ranging from limited data availability, particularly on nutritional habits and malnutrition. This is why we decided to conduct the nutrition survey as part of the data collection. Another key challenge was that beneficiaries were generally hesitant to speak about sensitive conflict dynamics. This is why it was important for the data collectors and interviewers to build trust, provide a safe space. And I mean, honestly, generally on ground as well, there is distrust amongst Libyans with foreigners, anyone that is non-Libyan. This is why it was important that the data collectors were part of the communities and they were all Libyans, of course. Of course, having the data collectors on ground to be all nationals, it has its pros definitely, but also has some potential risks if not dealt with correctly. So the biggest advantage, of course, is access to beneficiaries and to the field, especially given the movement restrictions and difficulty to access Libya. Both due to the conflict, but also due to the movement restrictions due to COVID-19 during the time of this evaluation. The other advantage, of course, was the trust that they had from beneficiaries and other stakeholders on ground during the data collection. On the other hand, I mean, interviewers and data collectors were trained quite well, particularly on issues related to bias. They were trained to be aware of their own biases, even, especially that they are living there and they may have their own views and opinions on the situation or towards different groups. Besides the training, of course, I mean, the evaluation team also like having a very strong hands-on quality assurance during the data collection phase, and as well as employing data triangulation from different sources to mitigate potential biases was quite essential for this evaluation. I mean, throughout the evaluation, really, the team encountered a number of personal grievances, perceptions, biases, rumors, even unfounded claims, misrepresentation of facts, biased interpretation of events or incidents, and sometimes conspiracy theories. And the team would conduct data verification with various sources in the community and fact check these claims. And they would clearly identify in the report if there are any claims which the evaluation team was unable to clearly prove or deny. Other challenges included communicating with beneficiaries via the phone surveys due to the outdated phone numbers, which delayed the data gathering in some of the areas. So it might be useful to be aware of such potential limitations earlier in the process. And finally, the evaluation team also had difficulty reaching women due to both cultural issues and communication equipment. Many refused to be interviewed, and the ones who agreed only did so after gaining approval from a male figure in their family. And also, I mean, furthermore, the female data collectors that were calling to interview women found out most of the phone numbers on file were those of a male figure in the family, either a son or brother. And and I mean, what the evaluation team did is that in order to sidestep this barrier to directly reaching women in some of these areas, it was not the case in all areas, but in some areas, the data collectors would request to speak with the male figures to explain the rationale of the evaluation and solicit the input of their female family members. But I mean, overall, throughout the evaluation, the team was committed to ensure that 50% of the beneficiaries interviewed were women and have. Yeah, and that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rana, and for sharing also all the the lessons and the different ways that you incorporated the kind of the conflict sensitivity into the design, as well as how you overcame some of the challenges as the evaluation was being carried out. We've got about just over 10 minutes, and I'd like to open the floor. See a range of hands. I can see two. So lady in the front, and then we'll go back.
Thank you so much. It was a very good presentation and very informative. I would like to ask, so usually in fragile and in crisis context, there is a difficulty in finding good national evaluators that have access. So what is the best approach in this situation?
The gentleman at the behind, we'll take three questions and then we'll open up to the panelists. Sorry.
Thank you. My question is actually for Ms. Salam. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. But I just wanted to ask, when it came to the training of the national data collectors, was this done by WFP or by another entity? Also, I just wanted to ask a very similar question regarding finding women data collectors in such a fragile context. And finally, if this evaluation was published and if we can access it. Thank you.
Right, excuse me, sir, would you mind giving the floor to the person behind you? Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ignatius from Liberia. My question also goes to Ms. Salah. I also work in the UN system, so I know how it is sometimes. From my understanding, that much of the data was basically quantitative data, but I will also assume that you did some triangulation, especially with using mixed methods. I would like to know to what extent that you and the team made use of technology when gathering the data, especially given the challenging context in Libya, plus the emerging pandemic. Because I know we at UNDP Liberia faced similar challenges at first when it came to conducting evaluation, and we had to try to figure out how to move from the traditional means of collecting data to Zoom and other technological tools. So it will be interesting to hear if you did and to what extent you made use of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you also want to come in?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for the presentation. My name is Edward, and I'm from Liberia. Dr. Sarah, I heard you talking about evaluation guidelines that I sent from New York. I wanted to know, how does that reconcile with the issue of national ownership, local ownership, or sustainability? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we'll start with Rana on the Libya evaluation specific, then we'll move to Dr. Monicata on the VNR. And then I think a question for all the panelists on how to find, approach national evaluators. So over to you, Rana.
Thank you so much, and thank you for these really important questions. I mean, I believe honestly, this was the biggest factor behind the success of this evaluation, was really identifying the right team and the right evaluation team and the right national experts to be able to conduct this evaluation. Libya is a very complicated context, and it would have been difficult. I mean, it's already difficult enough for staff to access Libya, and it would have been difficult to get someone completely outside of the context to be able to go there. What we did is that we capitalized on regional platforms and evaluation societies to be able to identify an evaluation team that has experience in conducting evaluations in Libya in the past. We were able to contract an excellent team, which also, so the evaluators themselves, the team leader is not based in Libya. However, she has a whole team of data collectors and national staff that are based in Libya and in several villages and cities as well, several areas of Libya. And actually the training that has been conducted in order to mitigate any issues related to bias, that was conducted by the evaluation team that we recruited. As for the question around whether the evaluation is published, yes, it's published, and we're happy to share the link for this evaluation. And yes, I mean, another important thing is really the trust that is built between the evaluation team and the evaluation manager throughout the whole evaluation process. It's not only about having a discussion and getting a report at the end. I mean, there was very strong collaboration between the team leader and the evaluation manager. Whenever any issues would come up in the field, these would immediately be flagged, and there was a general a sense of, I mean, the evaluation team was not coming to judge WFP. Of course, there is an objective of accountability, but the objective was to really bridge the gap between evaluators and decision makers, and use this as a learning opportunity to think about the way forward and how to enhance the programs. And finally, on the point regarding the use of technology, for this evaluation, I mean, we are utilizing, of course, quantitative data from monitoring data that have been used before, and the monitoring, the country office had monitoring tools to gather data remotely. However, for the data collection for this evaluation particularly, we were utilizing this data from monitoring, but our data collection was conducted either through phone surveys or in-person interviews actually on the field. But of course, we hope to work more towards integrating technology in evaluations, because it's quite crucial in these settings. Thank you. I hope I answered all questions.
Okay, I will give an answer to the question regarding how to reach good evaluators in fragile settings. One question about that. It's not that complicated. You go through donors that are already working in that context. They will have connection with people who know the context. One example is a German organization that is working with us in Guinea and Mali. Another German organization wanted to do evaluation, and because they have no connection, they went through that organization, which recommended us to give them ideas. So that's a good way. But the second way is, if you don't have connection with donors, you can come to the network of civil society organizations. Generally, they are organized in thematic groups, education, health, you know, the other things. And if your thematic is education, for instance, you go to the leader of the thematic group on education, he will link you to organizations that are doing work in evaluation, and they will give you contact, but also government offices in the sector. And finally, you could also think about some serious universities in the country where you have some researchers. The second question is, how do we ensure ownership of the process when guidelines come from New York? Actually, the guidelines that come from New York or other partners they do not restrict the work or tell us exactly what to put in the report. That's owned by the country. But, you know, the UN is willing to make a comparative analysis of the situation from country to country. So you need to give some basic guidelines or principles to people so that they can align the content of their reports to those. One example is, for instance, which sustainable development goals should be the focus. The UN will say, this year, we want to focus on these. So if you write your report, make sure that you give us information on these. But it doesn't say that you shouldn't work on others. That's because that year they decided that these are priorities globally and they want to see what is happening in those sectors. But as I did for civil society, when we received the guidelines, we had 3 kind of sustainable development goals. We decided what the high-level panel wanted to see. We worked on that. But what was priority for civil society in Mali, we also developed. And then we put the rest as second kind. So the guidelines do not play against how you organize a process in country, but they tell you ways to work so that others can use it and compare information across the world. Thank you.
And Dr. Delby, would you like also to either build on that, because you've done the VNR a couple of years ago, you're preparing for the next one, or answer the question about the national evaluators, or how to find also the national enumerators?
As you said, and now we are also working to have the second national report of the SDGs and the VNR. Here, as my colleague said, about, of course, we have a problem about the people, or we can say the capacities, who works on the evaluation or collecting the data. But I believe that the ways that we worked on it, that we have the supports from the partners when we do the studies or the surveys. This is the first time. After that, it will be led by the national, we can say, capacities. So it's okay for us. I think this time when we will work on the second national reports, it will be easier for us because we have background, we have experience, and we will take it by ourselves. Of course, we still need to know the new tools, the new systems, mechanisms. It is not necessary to have it in a short time. It needs long time, and consequently works on it. So for us, we put this matter as a important one, and we try to have grammatic work to support the people or who works to collect data and we can say it, analyze it and put the reports.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you. There was several questions raised. So just I'm going to elaborate 2 questions. One was how we can get a national evaluator who conduct and collect data. In our context in Somalia, there is an area where the normal evaluators can't go. So in that context, most of the time, the recruitment happen inside the country. So there is NGOs or other companies who are functioning in operating inside the Somalia, who have access to go there. So there is a possibility to use them. Yeah, that's one thing. And the other intervention that I want to elaborate is that training. You were talking about the training, how to train the evaluators. Today, this morning, the session that we have, it's raised many things. One was that connectivity. So the connectivity, it's not only backward and onward, it should be. That means the international, independent evaluators, they should have connections inside. At the same time, they have to have connections outside the country. For example, this in our context in Somalia, there is many Somalis diaspora who have the context and who have the knowledge, competency, and at the same time have accessibility to go there. So this, and they are very competent. Training also today there was real-time training was talked about. The training should be, for example, now independent evaluators, when they are working inside the country, they should give skills. They should arrange trainings for the country they are working. So from there, I think we will get evaluators when they train. And this training can happen in case of our context, Somalia. There is an area where evaluators can be trained without any harm. And I recommend that the external evaluators should think about this to train in order to get many evaluators, national evaluators who are capable, having knowledge, at the same time have accessibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Unfortunately, like all good things, they come to an end. And I think we've done a journey from a state, central, still constitution to happen, still M&E framework to happen, all the way through this, again, power of regional competition using data to be able to have the voice hold a government accountable, to, again, very practical considerations relating to struggling to access the right information in the right way with the right person and with the right tool. Very, very powerful. And I think it, again, re-emphasizes many of the themes that came up this morning, in fact, over the last couple of days. And as we go into this last plenary, and in terms of how the collective action that we all need to bring together the different voices and the different approaches, I think the fragility of the different settings is we need to make sure that it's there and takes into account how we support one another, complement each other, not compete, and we're building on each other's strengths. So on that note, apologies for no more question times. The panel is here, and thank you very much for your time, and a huge round of applause to the panelists. Thank you.